Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux, taking a look at the feature race at Del Mar on Saturday. It's race number 2. Let's throw up the field for the $100,000 Desi Arnaz Stakes. These are 2-year-old fillies going 7/8 of a mile. And as you can see, Bob Baffert has 80% of the field. Although the number 1 Tenma right now is a questionable starter, Baffert not sure if he's going to run in the Desi Arnaz or perhaps wait for a race like the Starlet at Los Alamitos. Not very exciting.
No, I mean, I think the whole thing there's a different issue at hand here, right, Dan? Just being overloaded here with one trainer, and we see that sometimes at various jurisdictions with various trainers. It's an unfortunate thing that we're seeing in racing right now. But listen, you look at this group. I think when you try to compare them, I think two maybe of the Bafferts stood out to me a little bit compared to some others in here. But again, I think a lot in here is going to depend on the pace of the race. They're only going 7/8. There's a ton of speed in here. There's a couple of closers. Maybe it becomes an exciting race once we watch it unfold live. But on paper, maybe not the best.
Well, let's throw up our Timeform US pace projector and see how our friends at Timeform US believe this race will unfold after the opening quarter mile. Silent Law does look like the fastest of the Baffert train runners, and Baffert himself confirmed that in the race advance penned by our colleague Brad Free. Mawu was a debut winner in gate to wire fashion, but just doesn't look as brilliant a horse like Silent Law. If the pace is hot, Tenma, if she runs in this race, looks like the strongest late closer. And not only has she shown a good kick in her races, she's also shown strong determination and a will to win.
Absolutely. The horse that I'm kind of curious about from a pace perspective is Two Bar. I know Two Bar in the first two starts was further back, but in maybe not in terms of the opening quarter, but the opening half last time out when this one was able to graduate was pretty quick, Dan. So I don't know if necessarily she's going to be as far back as this kind of places her. She could be closer to the pace. I mean, they still went 44 and 3 to the half.
And Timeform US did have those pace fractions color-coded red, indicating that they were fast. Perhaps Two Bars just found her niche as a front runner in her last race. Let's start things off with Tenma, who won her first two starts, including the Grade 1 Del Mar debutante, going 7/8 of a mile. She's got some work to do here in the stretch, but this is what we saw from Tenma in her debut. She really wants to beat you. She rallies outside this horse, and she is able to take Vodka with a Twist, who's pretty good in her own right, down to the wire and get the nod.
A couple of things are going to work her way. She's going to cut back in distance. I think looking at her most recent effort going a mile and a 16th, she had some issues, but she also wore blinkers in that event, Dan. And I think the thought process was her stretching out. They didn't want her to be too far back, and maybe putting her towards the front and chasing the pace actually worked against her. So I think those are the two positive signs for her. Obviously, in her first two career races, she did everything right. And she has the ability to be tactical. She draws the inside in here. Wouldn't be surprised if she does go off favored in here just based on the fact that she's a grade one winner.
And considering Baffert's embarrassment of riches in this division, she was beaten by non-compliant last time out, who's getting a little bit of a break after being withdrawn from the Breeders' Cup. Tenma, though, a strong closer with class. And you mentioned a good point, the blinkers off. She's already 2 for 2 without them. Practical Dream is the only horse in the race not trained by Baffert. She was a good-looking debut winner in gate-to-wire fashion, and then she ran pretty well in her second lifetime start. This is against Silent Law, who we're also going to talk about, and who is very quick from the gate. And in this race, Silent Law just opened up a big lead in the blink of an eye. Practical Dream was placed on a hard chase, but she's giving no quarter in the stretch.
No, she ran well. She did everything that she could, just came up second best on this day. I think in terms of taking a huge step forward between her races, not necessarily, but excited to see her back at Del Mar. I thought her debut at Del Mar was very professional like. She did everything right. And to this point in her career, I can't really deem her as one sort of style of horse. I think she wants to be forward. And again, at 7/8, we're not going to see any, in my opinion, true deep closers in here. I think everybody has the ability to be a little bit closer to the action, or they can sit a length or two off of it.
You mentioned Two Bar's most recent appearance for Baffert. It was the third lifetime start. It was one of those maiden optionals where he was in for the waiver, and she ran very well that day. You mentioned the fast pace, but not only was it fast, but it was contested, and Two Bar just shrugged off her pace protagonist and went on to score by open length. So maybe she's just a late developer figuring it out at the right time.
Yeah, maybe. And maybe, the drop helped her a little bit too. It was that restricted spot and she was able to dazzle there. Certainly a huge step up compared to what we saw 2 starts back. But again, that was at a mile. So I agree with you. It was just her second time sprinting. I think the interesting thing that you mentioned earlier, and looking at this a little bit closer, Dan, is Tenma, Hector Barrios never been aboard. Kazushi's going to go elsewhere. Tiago Pereira is going to get this horse that he's never been aboard. That suggests to me that Tenma might be scratched. And then out of these horses, that Juan Hernandez maybe thinks that Silent Law is a little bit better than Two Bar. That's just me maybe playing a little bit of a game here, but that's kind of how I see this.
Silent Law looked like the goods in her career debut, going 5/8 at Los Alamitos. She's used to facing short fields, only 3 in her debut, only 3 when she beat Practical Dream. She was 1-10 in that debut and just simply toyed with a field full of first-time starters. We saw her take care of business when beating Practical Dream last time out, and she is just so fast from the gate. Now we'll see if she can stretch that speed another furlong, but she could be firmly in control of this when they turn for home.
She could. And on debut, she showed, hey, she can kind of overcome a little bit of issues at the gate and still be much the best. And I think to me, not just because the figure is bigger, but her debut I thought was more impressive. Knowing that it was at Los Al, what is the one thing we talk about, Dan? The long stretch at Los Al, you can kind of get lost out there. She still won by 10 lengths. That wasn't what happened to her, right? She was much the best. And then she followed it up with a win. So I think that's going for her. You mentioned she has the early foot. And then I played the mind game. I think Juan Hernandez wants her because out of the fillies that likely stay in here, she might be the best horse that Bob has.
The 5 Mawu certainly wasn't as flashy as Silent Law and certainly isn't accomplished as Tenma and doesn't have the speed figures of those horses, but I thought she gave a really professional try in her one and only start at Santa Anita. She didn't break very well from the inside, but she set a pressured pace inside the experienced favorite and then just grinded it out in a workmanlike manner. I think there's some upside potential here. It's worth noting she was listed as a vet scratch last month.
I think the big thing that works out well for her is the outside post. You mentioned it. She won on the front end last time out, but I think compared to the other fillies in here, she isn't the quickest. So that Kazushi will have some options, be able to save a little bit of ground and hopefully close late. She kicked on very nicely in that final eighth of a mile last time out. So what's there to say? We only have that one race to go based on, and it was good, Dan. She's a wild card. You don't really know where she's going to go from here.
Let's take a look at our top selections for the Desi Arnaz race 2 at Del Mar on Saturday. You're going with Silent Law, just brilliant speed and super visually impressive in both starts.
Yeah, and we know Juan is go-to for Bob, and I think he probably had the option. I think she is the horse to beat in here. You can see all the same 3 for us in the top spots here. I think there's cases to be made for each of them. I think in terms of accomplishments, though, Tenma is the horse that has accomplished the most and has some things going for her as well. But I'm most excited about Silent Law to see if she can kind of take another step forward.
Maybe Mawu will offer a slightly better price than the other 2 Bafferts that we have in there. And the horse she beat last time out did come back to win by 9 lengths, a maiden special with a 71 buyer. So I'm hoping for a little bit of a forward move and maybe a tactical trip outside Silent Law. 4-5-1 for Ashley, 5-1-4 for me, and the Desi Arnaz Stakes at Del Mar on Saturday. Good luck. Hey, let me give you a hot tip. If you liked the content that you've seen before, click on the like and subscribe button right here. And of course, for more DRF videos like Race of the Days, stakes previews, click on the videos right here.